What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Apartment 113 podcast, where we talk with cool folks in the cannabis and psychedelics industry to learn about their projects and celebrate their successes. My name is Rob Sanchez, and this is episode 49. We're joined today by Charlie Varzé, co-founder of Golden Triangle Exotics. Charlie is an advocate for craft and quality with a lifetime of cannabis cultivation and extraction experience. He's worked on several projects in Canada from micro to massive, contributing to one of the biggest LPs in the country. For more information, connect with him on LinkedIn and follow Golden Triangle Exotics on YouTube at Cannabis Exotics. Enjoy the show. Charlie, welcome, dude. Good to have you.
Thanks, Rob. It's great to be here.
Yeah, man, it's a conversation a long time in the making. You might have been one of the earliest folks to know that this podcast was in the works, and it was an embarrassingly long time ago.
I think I have a message from you many years ago.
Yeah, it's like I think maybe 2017 or 2018 or something, talking about getting a podcast rolling for the space.
And look at you now.
It took maybe 3 years longer than expected, but yeah, we're here, man, and you're on the show.
You're a gangster, man. What can I say?
We made it. And it's when we first met, I think it was 2017 then, or maybe it was earlier 18 when you guys came down to Vegas for training.
Yes, that's right.
The good old days. I was implementing and training seed to sale software, all that fun inventory management, learning some skills that I still use in the day-to-day. And that was when I was still learning a lot about the Canadian market, and ended up doing more work up there with you guys than I was doing in the US for a year or two.
That course was a grind. I loved it. Was good. I tell you, you were on your game for sure.
Those ERPs are heavy, man.
They are heavy, yeah.
It can do it all, but you've got to kind of learn it all too.
Yeah.
Did you see other software here the last few years, or anything else kind of taking off on the Canada side that's grabbing some market share?
I like Cropsify and Certicraft. I think those two are going to be the go forward, user platforms. I think they've really streamlined what's important, taken a lot of that, just the mundaneness out of it. It's really intuitive. So I like those.
That's awesome. I'll have to take a look at them a little bit and see. It's an interesting thing to try and reinvent an ERP. The traditional manufacturing space thought that they had done it well, or the traditional ag thought that they had it all done. And then cannabis comes in and introduce so many, different things that an application has to do, or that a grower needs to track. But let's rewind the clock here, as we do on the show, and go way back here before your current projects, to hear a little bit about how you've got involved in the industry, and how you found cannabis, or cannabis found you.
Cool. Well, I think like a lot of people, the connection for cannabis started quite early. I was around 14 years old. I got to try some hashish, and
going top shelf at a young age, man.
And that's true to form for my life. I tend to manifest right to the nuts, wow, I can say I was immediately connected to the experience, and I could see how that cannabis was going to play a major role in my life after that. And at such a young age, it's a pretty special thing to be able to have that, and
definitely made an impact for you, huh?
Yeah. So, it took a while for me to get to actually growing cannabis, but consuming it,
and enjoying, huh?
I don't consume it anymore. When my daughter was born, I decided that I was going to stop smoking, and then I went to edibles, and now I'm really happy just kind of like being a weekend warrior, every now and again.
Right, just consuming when you need to, or when you've got the time.
Yeah, or if I'm feeling a certain kind of way, you know what I mean?
I see. Yeah, I'm kind of on a similar path, man. I think really I was like kind of a daily consumer, and if I'm not careful, I can be a all the time consumer and just keep on going.
Yeah.
The only thing that cares about that is my bank account.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, since my daughter was born actually earlier last year, I kind of started trying to moderate more and cut back on the consumption. Burning anything in the house. So I cut to the vaporizer, and then recently have been moving into edibles, and just this week and last week starting to move into tincture. So I think I'm kind of backing out of that like regular consumption space, but I still want to carry that flag of connoisseurship, right? Craft and quality. And it's kind of an afterthought in the US market, at least, when it comes to moderation, tolerance, or kind of wise or responsible use. It's almost a laughable fact, and people are just like, hey, like smoke more, buy more, discounts and deals and memberships, like come into the shop. And I don't think a lot of the community is focusing on the moderation that has to come with like a long-term habit with cannabis.
Yeah.
That's kind of hard. It's not as fun to talk about, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like life is more vibrant and colorful. The music sounds better. Your overall experience is like you could watch a program and go, man, that was the best. That was the best episode ever. You know
You're
what I mean?
hooked.
And
Yeah, you're feeling it.
you're
Yeah.
feeling it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So when you were first consuming that, that's always like some of the highest times people can remember. I mean, it takes long tolerance breaks for me to feel the way that I did when I was 15, 16, consuming the first two or three times. I think one of the times I was when I was just starting to really experience it. I remember leaning against the wall with my friends, and we would buy a sack like Friday night, and then we would just basically smoke the whole thing, many bowls after one after the other, and be done with it Friday, and like do the same thing the next week. And I just remember I was singing this song, like a dumb song, like boop boop boop, something stupid like that. And my friend just looks over me and starts cracking up, and he's like, "Why are you singing that song?" And I just started dying laughing, man. It's like I thought that was in my head, dude. And that's just kind of one of the. I feel like one of those like pivotal moments where I was just like, all right, this is gonna be fun.
Yeah.
But there was definitely that. I think maybe like a sense of self-medication and things like that. I found, even if I wouldn't have known it was that, it was some comfort or some anti-anxiety and relief from things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I was very apprehensive. I'd been offered to try it a few times before I finally just caved in. And
Yeah,
as a someone who's hanging around with friends that are a little bit older than you, you have your crew's a little younger, a little older. You got a mix in there, and to feel that pressure, I kind of staved it off for a while, and then it was just like everyone's doing it, so fuck it.
yeah, kind of just joining the fray.
Yeah,
I
and
was always
I have a similar. Sorry, I have a similar standout for me on that very first time is after I took the hit, and it was hot knives off of a stove, like so like this is like this is awesome.
classics.
Yeah, classic. And I ended up sitting in front of like an oscillating fan and just talking like a robot for the whole night. It was just like so funny to me,
Just having the time of your life.
all by myself.
That's great.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes you need those times, though, of course, and then later on, I think it becomes a different thing. You don't really find that giggly high unless you're like, a weekend warrior, perhaps, or you're really working with your tolerance and moderation, that kind of thing.
It's true.
So that cannabinoid system gets a little bit blasted from a constant consumption.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
So it went from consuming and having just a passion for the product. When did it kind of cross that threshold and become more of a production project for you?
In 1999, I got to go to Amsterdam and Germany. And
Cool.
it was that social scene in Amsterdam where, it is so tolerated and it's just out in the open. I mean, this is back in the early 90s, so I don't know what it's like there today, but
It
wow,
was an eye opener, huh?
what an epiphany, and just it changed the way I thought about it, And so coming back home, I started to explore different things about the plant. It wasn't so much of like what strains could I buy, or like what did my dealer have, or what did I have, It was more starting to think about, how do I do this? How do I grow this? And that's the moment, that's the pivotal moment for me.
Where it kind of changed the plans from just consuming or enjoying when it crosses your paths to maybe actually providing.
Right, and process, like I had been doing a lot of making my own hash, and at the time, doing like isopropyl alcohol washes.
Nice. Yeah.
Just doing a lot of that up until that point. So consuming and processing, but not growing, right? So
I imagine, were you the only one from kind of your group of friends or like in the area that was getting into that? Or was there a kind of a crew of you guys digging in to the extract side?
I would say that there was a lot of dabbling from some of my other friends, but I was the one that when I went and bought, say I bought a zip or something,
Yeah.
I was the one who was taking it and not just like throwing it in the bong and smoking it all. I was doing
Like,
stuff with it.
I got plans for this source material.
I do. Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely, man. That's awesome. And then, I mean, that caters really well into the modern space where there's so much to do with finished flower once it's ready to go. The
Yeah.
finished goods and extraction spaces have continued to grow and turn back on themselves, where I think like we're back where a focus on hash and even solventless starting to get traction finally in some markets that have been missing it in the US.
Yes, exactly.
How is the concentrate evolution for the Canadian scene? My experience up there was mostly flower, from what I got to try that when I was there on the west end on the East Coast. Mostly just because I didn't have a piece to consume concentrates while traveling.
Well, it's kind of a widely known that in Canada, the East Coast is very traditionally hash driven, and that's the Montreal area. I think the reason
Nice.
is because you're so close to that Atlantic port, so you're probably getting a lot of
Some quality source material coming in.
exactly, yeah. So it's really well known that in Canada, the Easterners, they love their hash.
That's where you're going to find it, huh?
Yeah, and then out west, because you have that Okanagan, very very similar to like the Northern California climate.
Yeah, like
Not
Pacific Northwest kind of vibes, right?
yes. So you got so that's sort of the flower mecca, if you will.
I see. Yeah, that kind of tracks, I think, with my experience as the flower I had on the east. I guess less than a shout out to Afria. I don't know if they're still around, but that's the flower I had there. And then I think over on the west, I don't remember a few different places I ended up trying, but the flower quality on the west at that time was head and shoulders above.
Exactly. Yeah.
Comes down to that environment and I guess the specialties of the area as well. And I'm sure there's quality flower churning out across the nation, in folks' basements and in different grows. But the Canadian industry is unique in that their distribution system is all going through the government after these businesses are done growing and cultivating, rather than having
correct.
the private owned dispensaries in the U.S. What's your perspective on that so far? Kind of seeing the trajectory like in your country, and then like kind of looking down how the states are doing it.
There are definite restricting headwinds around the provincial, federal, and municipal separation of the production and sale of cannabis. It's all across the board, right? So different regions are going to have different framework in place, and so that creates these very restrictive headwinds, and you're seeing that right now with like there are a lot of smaller craft cultivators who are struggling because they just don't have the resources to compete with, say, maybe a larger, So you're
Right. It's not that they don't want to compete. It's just that at some point that the budget is really going to be the limiting factor.
It really does come down to economics. You're right, Rob. Yeah.
That's where we see a lot of leaders and folks coming from outside of cannabis, with their experience and business acumen, trying to make it a success. And And some are really successful. Others are, I think they find obstacles, or they find that like the knowledge that they were confident in investment banking or in real estate or whatever they were doing before didn't quite, correlate in a one-to-one. They still found some surprises or some gaps.
Exactly. Yeah.
So from the kind of project mindset, when did you go into the more professional space for Canada, or when did you get involved in the full scale grows?
So there's two sides to that story. We when I say we, it's like I'll refer to my crew, which is the inner circle of my network coming up, and of course those networks, they tend to expand as you invest in them.
Right.
So we have pre and post legalization storyline for me. So pre-legal, we started doing 20 lighter grows, investing in warehouses and doing it really clandestine.
Wow. Yeah. So really able to churn out some weight.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I did that up until 2016. 2005, I grew my first plant, strawberry cough.
Ooh,
Had
started with some goodness.
had such great results there, and I still, in this to this day, I really hold that as the sort of like the caliber, like it's like the benchmark for me, because I stumbled on just a crazy strain, and I still, people are still talking about that one, even a few years after I managed to kill it. But 2016, I decided I'd had enough of the pre-legal stuff. So I applied for my ACMPR license, which is a federal access to cannabis for medical purposes, which allowed me to grow at
Okay.
home.
Ah.
And yeah,
What were the restrictions there for home grow at first?
so it is by plant count. So you have to apply for a certain number of plants, and that's so the ARC, or the sort of the license, took a few iterations. So the MMAR, MMPR, and then the ACMPR. But they were all plant count. So they were all based
I
on the
see.
number of plants. Yeah.
Okay. So if you wanted to grow them big, you were not restricted, huh?
No, it had nothing to do with size.
I always
So
thought that was kind of odd in the regs. That I think it just shows that the folks making the rules never grew the plants themselves. If they say like, "Hey, let's limit them to 12 plants," like you don't understand what 12 plants in a like 12 full-grown cannabis plants could really become.
right,
It could be
right,
massive if you
right.
have them in like 30-gallon pots.
Yeah, and depending on maybe if you had a pre-existing medical condition, you could argue for thousands of plants.
Wow.
So that was the loophole, right?
So you could run perpetual harvest in the house then with prop veg flower and then keep that cycle flowing.
Yeah, I ended up starting with a 220 plant license.
Okay. All right.
I had to pay. There's a small service fee involved in that, and it was an annual re-up. So every year you'd have to re-up it.
I see. And were you able to provide like as a caregiver for anyone else, or that was personal consumption or personal project only for the cert?
For me, personal, but there was
Gotcha.
there was framework written in the law there in that license where you could do designated grower if you wanted.
Oh, cool. Yeah, there's some of the states had that at first with medical, but now most of the rec programs are kind of cleaning that up, I guess, for better or worse. I kind of like that vibe. It's very like community friendly, with a grower helping like a small subset of folks. But I think that from what I was hearing is that they have trouble matching prices. Like it's going to be more expensive from that smaller craft grower that's your designated guy versus what the big multi-location operator can sell an eighth for.
I guess I think that's kind of what's working itself out here now.
Same kind of thing.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
yeah, that's a moment in time.
yeah.
But now is it anyone can grow at home in Canada, or still requires a medicinal registration?
So they passed the Bill C-45, I believe it's called, the Cannabis Act, and in that, there's a couple of caveats, and you have to be the owner of the property or have permission from the owner. You have to be of legal age, for consumption, which is 18. And aside from that, you can grow 4 plants. There are
Oh, that's sweet.
there are some provinces that have not adopted that yet, and I think Quebec is one.
Come on, Quebec. What are you doing?
Yeah, yeah. And there may be. I don't want to. I don't want to. I don't want to talk. I don't want to like presume I know everything about it, but I think there's at least one or two more provinces that have not adopted the grow your 4 at home yet.
Kind of coming up to speed. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And have you always been on the west, over in Alberta?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I really enjoyed traveling to Alberta, man. I need to go back and get to Banff. I want to see that national park. That's crazy.
It is gorgeous. Wow. I'm very blessed to live where I do.
Yeah, definitely. I always thought Alberta kind of reminded me of this stretch of the U.S. that happens like between Kansas and Colorado. You can start to see the mountains on the horizon, but it's still very like prairie, open fields.
Yes.
Good vibes there.
Yeah. So 2016, got my ACMPR federal license growing at home, and I thought I'll just take this a step further. So I applied at Sundial, which is about a 5-minute drive from my house here. And I ended up getting on their sanitation team, so cleaning tables and floors and that sort of thing.
Yep.
That lasted about a week. And then after about a week, and I was asked to become the lead grower. So that was fun.
You start showing some of your knowledge.
Yeah.
It starts by washing pots and trays, and very quickly start handling the IPM and nutrient schedules and so much more.
Yeah, during that interview, I said, give me a job, let me clean your toilets, and maybe I'll show you a thing or two. And they're like, okay.
That's cool, man. But that way you could kind of gauge the business a little bit too, without maybe giving that experience and knowledge. Yeah. With some of the legacy folks and legacy knowledge, companies are hungry for that, and it's hard to always appreciate the person giving that knowledge or bringing that to the table. I think there's people that feel exploited afterwards, or they literally are, to varying degrees. It's difficult there. So I think being able to vet the company a little bit or kind of find your way sounds like a good opportunity. And was Sundial still growing at the time, or was it like the Sundial that we knew of up until the end of last year?
Oh no, this is not the juggernaut of the war chest, as I call them, of cannabis production.
Okay.
This was not so. Sundial ended up being like a 600,000 square foot facility, and this was their 20,000 foot sort of jumping off point. So
nice.
It wasn't small, but it wasn't super massive. And learning a lot. They were really eager to learn, because they were still. It's funny, they were operating under the ACMPR license, the same one that I had for home. They had the same one. So.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
And was it all greenhouse at the time, or was it like a closed-in indoor?
So that's a good question, man. So the arc of that property was really interesting. It was like a horse boarding facility at one point, and then they did cucumbers as a greenhouse type of thing.
Okay. So it had a little bit of like architecture already supporting it.
A little bit, yeah. But then they went fully cannabis black house. So they ended up just walling up everything and going, full on artificial lighting for everything.
You are the sun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice, man. So really got to see that place get some traction in the market and start to turn out some good products. Were there any unique obstacles in that grow that you had to tackle?
Oh, for sure, man. Well, for one thing, their lights were like bare bulb HPS and metal halide with parabolic reflectors. I mean, this is like you're stepping back into the 70s, man.
You didn't even have the lenses in the cover in the ballast covers.
No, man, no, it was crazy. And then of course they started bringing in some of the double-ended stuff. So that was nice to see that transition, the evolution. But one of the biggest challenges at the time, and it wasn't just Sundial, it was like everybody experiences, was in order to get starting material genetics, you had to like buy from everyone else. So it was like this cesspool of like incestuous
Just
genetics.
the same pull again and again. Yeah.
It was just like, oh, you've got, you've got Cold Creek Kush, or like shishka berry.
Yeah.
It's
Again.
like, oh, come on, man.
You're like, no, this shishka berry's different. I'm telling you.
So that was hard. That was hard to differentiate yourself, and I think in my opinion, like differentiation, innovation, and disruption, those three go hand in hand. And when you can do any of those well, it's almost like a fire triangle, right? You could create a really really blazing fire. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah, man. That's a powerful combination there.
It really
If you're seriously lacking any of those three, you're probably gonna feel it.
And everyone was, right. So you're lumped into the same. Everyone was the same. There was no uniqueness.
That's hard. Yeah. Did the laws allow, or did the regs allow, like, pheno hunting and actually sourcing seeds, or it had to come from more established?
Okay. So this is fucked up, man. Oh, sorry. I don't know what kind of language I'm allowed to use on this.
Oh, have at it, dude.
Okay.
Yeah.
So eventually, the federal government allowed what was called an amnesty period. There was like 24 hours where you could bring in anything.
Where you're like, oh, dude, I had all these plants in my closet.
So they started allowing this like amnesty on genetics, right? So it's like you made a declaration, right? So you wrote a declaration to Health Canada, and you said, this is what we're bringing in, right? And it was just like, so people got creative. They started declaring like random nondescript bags of seeds, like 10,000, 50,000 seeds to be determined.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Just like, we will literally phenome hunt this and create something new. That's all you need to know.
That's all you need to know. So here's a bag of nondescript seeds. It didn't even have to be,
like cultivar or strain specific. Yeah.
It could be hemp. It didn't matter.
Yeah, there's a grace period like that in the U.S. as well for starting up cultivation when you get your professional license, at least. But it's a pretty small window. So if you didn't have some kind of nursery in the background or genetics kind of sourcing already, you can be stuck, actually just buying seeds and like starting at that time, which is not always the best.
Right. Yeah.
Takes a while to perfect anything. I guess even if you're growing those outside, as soon as you bring them to the facility, those ladies need to adjust, huh?
Are you talking like outdoor grow?
I guess like bringing in genetics that were already growing and potentially stressing them out by like adding them into your new place. Yeah,
and of course you can imagine like every challenge that's presented with that scenario happens, right? Because like you're bringing them in, and now all of a sudden you've got spider mites, and you've got powdery mildew, and you've got nobody knew anything back then. Nobody knew.
Everything slides. Yeah, it was the Wild West.
It really was.
The best way I can describe that too is in the U.S. side is when I was cultivating in Denver, we had our nutrient recipe written on a whiteboard, and a dude like leaned against it one time, kind of erased some, and nobody knew what it was. We just had to make it again. It was just gone.
Yeah, it was just gone.
Yeah, like I don't know how many milliliters it was. Like, well, let's start reading online again about what the flower newts should be. Like, it was pretty rough, man. And our tracking system was basically painter's tape.
Yeah, someone's running for the calculator.
Yeah, for real.
Like, oh God. That's awesome.
And now when I see these grows that have like these full-on, dosatron systems and like automatic nutrient mixes, just, man, it's a mountaintop right there. I was standing over a barrel mixing that shit.
Yes, and I prefer that actually. You can automate and automate all you like, but there's some certain things that you need to do, very hands-on.
Just being able to test it yourself and really measure it. I mean, there was kind of like a Zen aspect of like actually crafting that and spending time with it, where I think just turning on the machine might lose that connection a little bit, but you can get that elsewhere probably in the supply chain.
Yeah. It's a balance.
Yeah. So from sundial to sugarbud, how did that evolution go for you, or how did you make your way over to the next LP then?
So the founder of Sundial, quite a visionary gentleman, Stan Switek. Sorry, am I allowed to drop proper names in this?
Yeah, definitely, man. Yeah. Shout out to Stan, man. We'll get you on an episode down the road.
Shout out to Stan, man. This guy has been through the grinder, come out several times, good and bad. So he's in my opinion one of the strongest business people that I've had the pleasure of meeting and working with. He's very strong person. So he ended up making a deal where we were designing and building Sundial's larger facility, and he was in the process of like a divestiture, 100% sale he wanted out of that Sundial. So
okay.
he made off like a bandit. I think he made really good money on that.
That was
But he cherry picked
before Sundial really over-invested, perhaps, or overgrew.
Yeah. So he could see. I think he saw the writing on the wall with that one and
Yeah.
made the right choice. But he grabbed a couple of really talented people, myself included, and we went on to start Sugar Bud Craft Growers.
Nice.
With the understanding that we had made mistakes and we'd learned some things, and Sugar Bud presented this sort of clean slate, an opportunity to really just do things differently if we wanted to.
And that was a full build, or were you retrofitting a warehouse for Sugar Bud?
That was a bare earth, full on ground up, had the land and just went to town.
Awesome. That's what I thought. Yeah, that I was lucky enough to see that facility, but when I was there was no plants in the whole building.
Oh.
It was all just racks and folks getting trained.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
So it'd be awesome to wander through that again someday and see it all live.
So
I think you guys were doing the canopy, like the double layer grow already.
yeah, so that's kind of where I cut my teeth on. At the time, it was called. This is how I was introduced to it. It was called growing the California way. I'm using like air quotes here.
Right.
And the California way was the trifecta. It was the pip racks, the rolling racks. And
Yes.
It was the Fluence LEDs, and it was the vertical air solutions, intercanopy airflow mixing, right?
Yes.
And so we ended up, that's what I brought to the table. I used my network, connected with some really great people, and we ended up I think we were one of the first to really adopt the California way here in Western Canada anyways. And if I'm overstepping, I apologize, but in my world, that's what it felt like.
Yeah, right. No, I think that makes sense. And it's like before that, were people more trying to find their own way rather than rely on like a trusted setup? They were, more choosing their own adventure or trying to find an alternative that might be more competitive or something unknown.
Yeah, I can't really speak to that, but for me, it was like when I learned about it and when I started talking to the people who were doing it, like James Cunningham and Mitch Galton and Michael Williamson and those guys, and when I started learning about their experience and what they were doing, I think the people who would have stumbled onto that grow method probably would have got it right away, like me. You're like, this light bulb goes off, you're like, ding.
This is going to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. And then, so Sugar Bud growing, getting better, and then eventually the sun was setting, or Sugar Bud was entering a new phase for you, or for the business side that you actually found your way to a different LP after that, or back home maybe to the original LP.
Right. So maybe I'll just add some context here so that you can understand my mentality, or sort of like my interest at the time was, I'm a quiet observer, for one thing. I really just like to listen and look, and I don't have a lot to say because I'm usually not the smartest guy in the room, and I can always learn, right?
That's a good habit, though, to never be the smartest.
Yeah, so being a quiet observer, I chose a couple of hard, fast rules for myself when I was getting into cannabis, and that was, I wanted to be on a path of self-education. I wanted to start to just go where the wind took me, be very fluid in my projects, and be able to transition. If I felt maybe a project had less to offer and something had more to offer, then I wanted the freedom to be able to, go with the flow. And so I always took projects as a consultant, and maybe not on the books. Maybe I had a title, but I let it well known to the management and the C-suite or who was ever running the show. I'm like, listen, I'm here for a good time, not a long time. I'm on
Right.
a path of self-discovery, and I'm not finished my education yet, right? So that's kind of that's how I did that.
Excellent. Yeah, and I mean, that's a good boundaries to set, man. It's set making sure you have your kind of trajectory there and your values in the career can be difficult as, money and pressures and life kind of present themselves.
Yeah, yeah. And until I finally was satisfied, which, and I guess I've never satisfied, but until I felt comfortable in saying like I could move away from the consulting collaborative thing and maybe plant some roots and
Yeah.
be a more permanent fixture in some place. That happened to me, just recently. And it was like you said, like, so we went to Sugar Bud. I was there just as a contract consultant, get the wheels turning, get the motor running, and then Stan, of course, because he's just so dynamic in character, he saw that even Sugar Bud at I think it was like 30 something thousand square feet, 30,000 square feet. Anyways,
Wow.
he's
Yeah.
like, this is too big. He's like, we need to go smaller because he was listening to a lot of what I was saying at the time, and I'm like, Stan, you need a balance, right? There's got to be a balance of craft and automation, and to find that, it's smaller than what you think. And so we went and we did choice growers together. So that was the third project with Stan.
Okay. Nice. So then
Yeah,
Choice Growers was then kind of a revamp, but with a smaller footprint for the sake of quality, huh?
for the sake of quality, my friend. And it
That's
was
awesome.
all about really focusing on the fear of missing out mentality went out the window. It's like we're not here to produce boatloads and truckloads of this shit.
Yeah.
What we
Yeah.
want to do is produce a really, really sought after product where people will hang on to their $20 because it's not in the store, but it will be next week.
Yeah, it'll speak for itself, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Totally, man. Yeah, I think that can be hard to do at first because the drive is to do more and more and more.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm a proponent that the connoisseur in the cannabis industry is the big spender. It's the regular consumers and the folks that are going to find that quality and buy nothing else, or make sure and judge everything against that going forward. Who businesses should care about more, and I think churning out mids is like in the old terms is like a good way not to be called back, right? You're
Yeah.
just like, all right, that was just very fine. So weed. Like, we're probably not going to call that dude again. If you know someone else who had fire or something else coming from California.
It's very tough to convince someone after your first impression, right?
Yeah, yeah. So the choice growers, did you guys go with a very similar kind of setup then, as far as the cultivation methods, or did you try to reinvent anything in that setup?
Well, I think one of the aspects that really got a lot of people talking about projects that I was in is my affinity towards aeroponic growing, right? So
Cool.
I always
Uh,
presented aeroponics as if you wanted to do high automation and then with cost control discipline. So there's some really cool methodologies and strategies that I really try and live day to day when I'm in a project. And one of them is cost control discipline, right? So if you're controlling your costs, then that leaves that money or that margin to work for you elsewhere.
you
You know
could
what I mean?
pivot if you need to,
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah. So
yeah.
what choice represented was a heavy investment in science and a heavy investment in craft, and to have the two, I coined the phrase the convergence of commercial and craft.
That's better than what I was gonna say, combining craft and science into science.
Right. So yeah,
The
so it was the
convergence of commercial craft sounds very formal. I like that name.
yes, yes. So like we did aeroponics at Choice. We did with super small droplet size for the roots. We started looking at the science of root development and what that meant for plant growth and structure. And
Oh, sweet.
there's so much here to unpack. Like I'm appreciative of the opportunity to say hi to your listeners. But I would be I would be super excited to do another one or two of these with you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's plenty to dig in there. For the folks who don't know on aeroponics, it can be difficult to maintain or to get set up at first. Just with the way that you have to get like certain droplet sizes, and all of your plants are put in tubes that are enclosed, and you're putting through a very fine mist of nutrient-rich fertilizer, essentially. And yeah, your plants are growing in open air that way.
That's right.
Yeah,
And
and that is a lot less work, right? You're not mixing up soil, you're not changing pots. Most of the time in those systems, they actually flower where they veg.
absolutely. And I would say that it's not so much as there's not as much work. I think the work shifts to different areas.
It's more front-loaded work, kind of getting ready and getting the system ready to try to maintain it or automate.
Yeah, I think this is a great topic for another conversation. I don't want to get off track, but there, just like there's many ways to grow cannabis, there's many ways to do aeroponics.
Yeah,
As sort of a subtype of grow methodologies.
and I don't see a lot of aeroponics in the States. Every once in a while, you find it in the shop. I did find some great aeroponically grown flower in Chicago recently that was kind of top notch. But here in Vegas, I don't think I've seen a shop, or I don't think I know of a brand that does it.
If you're looking at who's doing aero in the States, look at Arise. Those guys are freaking killing it, man.
I think that's who I tried in Chicago, actually. It was beautiful.
Beautiful. They are crushing it, man. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. And so choice growers getting started, and all this, was this all still within like driving distance from Sundial, Sugar Bud, like all your projects just popping up around your house, or did you have to kind of bounce around a little bit for these projects?
Yeah, so Sugar Bud ended up being about almost a 2-hour drive from my home. Whereas,
Getting to be on the outer limits of acceptability there.
Yeah, but still, because I was committed, and I like to say, people are like, "Oh, I'm so passionate about cannabis." I'm like, "Oh, that's cute. Call me when you're obsessed."
Yes, I'll talk with you next year.
So 2-hour drive for me was like, okay, this is part of the deal. And then choice was about 45 minutes for me.
Oh, cool. Hey, closer to home, higher quality, more attention to detail. Switching to aeroponics. Sounds like a lot of pros in that equation.
Yeah. Now, talk a bit about challenges, right? Like, it's not all roses when you're talking about fitting in with different egos and personalities and characters and trying to start a business in cannabis. It can be very challenging. It's actually quite hard, but it's the people part that's hard, right?
I agree there. You could figure out process. You can figure out science. Yeah. No one can figure out people. Yeah. You're just working with them.
Usually and what really was the calling card for me to pick it up and just move on was when I started to see, I don't like to use the word bad actors because, no one's a really bad actor, but bad choices, maybe. That's a better way.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of seeing them happen more than they used to, or start to become a norm maybe when they weren't before. Yeah.
So, after choice, I had a couple of, experiences there that I was really not too crazy about.
I see.
So I took some time off and I ended up applying for a job at Sundial. So it's full circle for me, right? And I think that's cathartic. There's a lot of therapy in that.
And then this was like Sundial. Like huge sundial, right?
This is actually, okay, so previous, when I'm saying sundial, I'm talking about SUNDIAL. This is SNDL, all caps.
Right, they're on the, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, what kind of staff did they have at that size?
So I was hired on the heels of a RIF, a reduction in force, a reduction in workforce.
Yeah.
So just about a month before I got hired, they had something like 1,300, 1,200 employees.
Oh man, dude. That is just unreal, the size of those grows in Canada.
Yeah. And then I came on and they were about 700 employees strong on their force. 700.
Yep. And crazy to say, well, we're at half capacity with 700 people on the payroll.
Yeah. And just to give you an idea of scope, of the commercial scope of this place, the rooms were, right around 2,000 square feet, and there was legit I'm not even gonna lie here, 100 of these motherfucking rooms, man.
Wow. Yeah. It is just insane, man. And just, I can't imagine scheduling that and looking at the
Oh,
inventory and supply chain to feed that beast.
oh, it's a grind, man. And
Yeah.
like, I've never, I thought of myself as, pretty, pretty capable.
Savvy, man. Ready to
And,
tackle it.
and
Yeah.
coming in to see that, it was just like, I pissed my pants a little bit.
Like, all right. Where should we start?
Yeah. But I was only there for about 2.5 years before they ended up closing their doors. But in that time,
Yeah. Yep.
I was hired as a grower, and again, air quotes, right? Like the bottom of the corporate ladder.
Get
My
started and just trying to show what you know again, huh?
Yeah, when I got hired, they were like, "Listen, man, you're way overqualified." And I said, like, "Listen, I'm more than my title, dude. Let me come in. Let me see what I can do for you. Put me on wherever you need me." And 2.5 years, 11 promotions later, and I ended up being offered the director of cultivation for another sundial location out east, but I ended up just turning it down.
Oh, kind of had enough with Sundial a little bit, or ready to start looking for that next project, huh?
Well, and that's kind of where I'm at now, Rob. Is I'm very I'm very choosy about where I plant myself these days, and
Yes.
the
Yeah.
project that I've been working on now is family owned and operated, and just like really, really excited. I when I applied at Sundial, the big 600,000 square foot facility,
Right.
I went in with the ideas like these guys are too big to fail, and I'm just gonna make a career here, right? And so
Yeah.
yeah, but
Yeah.
they failed.
That's what I thought working with Akerna.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
No,
yeah,
man, that's
so that's
keeps you on your
me.
toes, man. Make sure you stay passionate, right? You're
Yeah.
trying to, in hindsight, maybe it's like, all right, maybe that was like too early to try to settle into the career, and now this next project could be the one, right?
I really hope it is. And again, I'm a realist, so whatever. It is
And
what it is.
what are the goals for the next one? We can save kind of the details for Golden Triangle extracts for a future episode if you like, but could you give
Yeah.
us an elevator pitch or a little bit of what's in store?
Yeah, definitely. Golden Triangle extracts, uh, bootstrapped it from the ground up. Our plan for this is to change the way genetics and nursery licensing is being offered to cultivation license holders. So, whether you're doing your propagation in-house or you're tapping a nursery for outsourced material, we've got several models in place that is absolutely going to be a game changer. And I will say this,
Cool.
my experience is look to mature markets for hints and clues on where an emerging market is going to be. So I started looking at, California, Colorado, Oregon. I started looking at these places and seeing like what are they doing now, and can we assume that some of that's going to happen here? And
Right.
and really, Rob, again, I fell in with my arse in the butter on this one. I've got such great hope for this little project. We're gonna change a lot of cool stuff here on
That's
this.
great, man.
Yeah.
No, yeah, looking forward to seeing that hit the ground and open the doors too. That's sweet. What's the ETA? What's the timeline you guys have right now?
So we've done our first seed round. We raised 220K.
Oh yeah.
We put that to work right away, and we're doing our second seed. So we're actually in the throes of a roadshow right now. We're and it's like with all these other projects, it was easy to go out raise 20, 40, $1 million. It was super easy.
Everyone
Now
was
it's
ready
now
and
it's hard. It's tough. It's so hard to raise money, but
yeah,
the investors who are still have a tolerance for cannabis and an appetite for cannabis projects, they're a little more savvy, and I think
they've seen it. Yeah.
they've seen it, so they can read through the chaff. They can push shit aside that they're like, no, this is garbage, but they can identify a diamond in the rough.
That's excellent. Yeah, so it's just about having those right conversations and yeah, and it's a numbers game when it comes to those pitches.
It is. It's a sales, right? It's all about sales, right? It's like, every no gets you closer to the yes. So we're just hammering them.
Nice. Yeah. I wish you guys a lot of luck in that endeavor here, man. And I want to thank you again for coming on the show and kind of giving us a little bit of your backstory. It was definitely cool to hear all the projects you've been involved in. And I know there's several more stories we should dig into here later. But in the meantime, dude, where can folks connect with you or reach out if they have any questions or want to talk shop about anything you mentioned?
Well, I'm still LinkedIn, of course, is kind of that's where I go to for just business connections right now.
It has become a wonderful space for connecting on the cannabis space. And I mean,
Yep.
in business in general, it already was, but it's a unique thing for cannabis right now.
Yep. I would say if you do start to follow me or you start to peek in at what I'm sharing with the community on LinkedIn, you're going to notice that I don't really contribute a lot to conversations unless it's a DM. If you want to chat with me, I'm happy to do a DM with you. But I'm just a quiet observer right now. I'm still not really comfortable, and I think that that's coming from where I came from. It's like you don't talk about
Right.
it, and I'm working
Yeah.
through that. It's therapy, man. I'm working through it.
Baby steps.
Baby steps. So for me to come on here today, I two things. Thank you so much for giving me a chance to come out of my comfort zone. I really do appreciate that. And secondly is, damn you, man. You're really getting me to push my comfort.
Got you out of the shell here. Nice, dude. We'll keep the challenges rolling. We threw down the gauntlet here.
Nice.
Yeah, thank you, Charlie. We'll talk soon, man.
Talk soon. Take care.
For more information about the show, along with our services and courses, visit apt113.com. We offer cannabis software product management, cannabis education courses, and freelance writing. With over a decade of experience in the cannabis industry, Apartment 113